Hello everyone, here is a flashback to 1 year of Russia's attack on Ukraine. To this day Ukraine still survives. Let's follow our analysis. The differences in the military strength of Ukraine and Russia are very much different. Russia is much stronger, but to this day Ukraine still survives. Let's follow our analysis. 3 months before Russia invades Ukraine in 2022, CIA Director and United States Ambassador to Russia, William J. Burns, Bill Burns and John J. Sullivan, meet with one of Russian President Vladimir Putin's hawkish advisors, Nikolai Petrushev, in Moscow. At the meeting, Burns said that the United States knew that Russia intended to attack Ukraine, and then reminded that Western countries would impose very harsh and severe sanctions on Russia if the invasion actually took place. According to Burns' confession, Petrushev was unmoved and ignored the warning, while giving a message through his eyes to Burns and Sullivan that the Russian military would achieve its targets according to the plans set by the limited team in Moscow. Reacting to this casual response, the CIA then leaked the Russian plan to the New York Times, which then ran a story about a buildup of Russian troops on the Russia-Ukraine border about 2 months before the attack took place. In addition, more importantly, the United States immediately informed Kiev about Russia's planned attack on Ukraine, while providing emergency military training for Ukrainian troops, which contributed to the country's survival to this day. Even though it seemed a bit stuttering, Moscow reacted to the leak of information through media reports by trying to build its own narrative that the buildup of troops was part of exercises that were usually carried out on borders with other countries. And that narrative debunked itself in February last year, where the invasion actually took place. It doesn't feel right. On February 24, 2023, it's been 1 year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The small and quick operation planned by the Kremlin failed to materialize. Ukraine turned out to be quite capable of countering the narrative built by Russia on the one hand and building national and international solidarity on the other. It may be that because of the leaking of invasion plans by the United States on the one hand and Ukraine also knowing about it on the other hand, Russia decided to carry out a small operation, which then failed to reach its target. The decision on a small operation with a short deadline is indeed the fruit of Russia's military reforms after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Russian troop unit was broken up into small divisions, imitating the United States style, while the quality and professionalism was continuously being improved. The results looked satisfactory when Russia conducted trials in Syria when Putin helped Syrian leader Bashar Hafez al-Assad expel ISIS. Likewise when Russia invaded Crimea. Putin relies on small units, including mercenaries. The target at that time could be said to be quite achievable. However, to invade Ukraine with a target area the size of Donbass and Donetsk, it seems that a more massive strategy and more mature troop readiness are needed, like the Soviets when they invaded Afghanistan in 1979. Moreover, the target failed to be achieved because the invasion plan was only known to a limited circle, namely the people close to Putin. As a result, the troops are less combat ready to the lower levels. Moreover, the Kremlin's denial of leaking CIA information to the media reinforced the belief of military elites outside Putin's inner circle that there would not be a large-scale invasion and therefore comprehensive preparations were not made. Then, because of the small and fast attack plans, war planners in Putin's small circle forgot the conventional military strategy, which required massive airstrikes first to paralyze Ukraine's strategic defense points, such as the United States Air Force strategy when crippling Saddam Hussein's forces in 2003 then. As a result, Baghdad was occupied no more than 2 weeks after a massive air campaign was carried out. Moscow did carry out an air campaign, but it lasted only a few days and the results were very limited, apart from of course the Ukrainian factor which knew about the invasion plan in advance. Ukraine's strategic military installations still survive and electrical energy is still flowing normally. The limited achievements of the Russian air campaign gave Ukraine room for maneuver, including gathering manpower to rise and build new lines of defense, so that the expansion of Russian forces would not extend too far towards Kiev, the capital of the Ukrainian state. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the initial information received by the United States and passed on to Ukraine has succeeded in becoming the basic material for the two countries to build commitments, namely the United States and its allies, who are ready to provide assistance and apply new sanctions to Moscow on the one hand, and Ukraine is ready to fight to the point last blood to maintain its sovereignty on the other side. Russia's miscalculations and Western commitments have finally succeeded in making Ukraine survive to this day, even being able to create a new balance on the battlefield, which forces Russia to recalibrate its strategy. This means that the war will still take a long time to reach the stage where the winner is known, unless there is a new diplomatic loophole that can be accepted by both parties. Because both sides are now balancing each other. Russia has realized its negligence by immediately carrying out a new mobilization on the one hand and forming a new line of defense on the other, according to the Russian military's war strategy textbook. Also, on the other hand, because of Ukraine's survival commitment, this country is inevitably sinking into the Western orbit of bogged, with aid concessions and new debts, which will make it more difficult for Ukraine to agree with Russia on many matters. As a result, this new lockdown will prolong the period of energy uncertainty in Europe. The more difficult it is for Ukraine to be conquered, the greater the opportunity for Putin to play energy as a bargaining chip. Putin has the potential to increase the volume of the ban on oil and gas exports to Europe, which will make countries on the blue continent increasingly haunted by high inflation. Moreover, recently it was indicated that the explosion in the Nord Stream 2 oil and gas pipeline some time ago was the work of the United States. In response, Europe has the opportunity to retaliate by increasing aid to Ukraine on the one hand and increasing sanctions against Russia on the other hand, which will then exacerbate tensions between Russia and Ukraine and between the West and Russia, as well as reduce the chances of peace via diplomacy. Meanwhile, for the world, the increasingly distant end of the war will increase the potential for a global recession because the potential threat of an explosion in commodity prices can occur at any time if Putin suddenly reduces his oil and gas supply to Europe. It is feared that the prices of basic commodities will return to volatility, especially those that are heavily affected by world commodity price fluctuations, such as what happened with the increase in fuel prices and the price fluctuations of cooking oil commodities in the middle of last year. Also, not forgetting, China's reaction, which is still ambiguous, has made Russia sure that the Red Bear country is not truly alone. Although China's stance in the United Nations General Assembly emphasized the importance of respecting a country's sovereignty, the Chinese foreign minister's visit to Moscow along with Joe Biden's visit to Kiev made China's position even more unclear. Geopolitically, the diplomatic path will be increasingly difficult. This lockdown actually opens up opportunities to bring Russia closer to its final choice in dealing with Ukraine and Western hegemony, namely nuclear weapons. This initial step was taken by Putin when reacting to President Joe Biden's visit to Kiev a few days ago, namely by declaring that Russia was leaving the Nuclear Warhead Limitation Agreement with the United States, or the START Treaty. The START Treaty was the last major strategic arms limitation agreement between the two nuclear superpowers, the United States and Russia, respectively. The agreement, drafted in 2009, was signed in Prague, the capital of the Czechoslovak Republic, in 2010 by then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev and U.S. President Barack Obama. The important contents of the agreement include limiting the strategic weapons arsenal and nuclear stockpiles deployed by the two countries, and agreeing to put forward a series of measures aimed at increasing transparency and mutual trust, including broadcasting telemetry data, limiting missile testing activities, and other exchanges of information. Referring to the actual situation 1 year into the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It seems that this is the time for the world, especially China, India and Indonesia, to act in an endeavor to pressure the United States and its allies to seek a new diplomatic route that can reduce the potential for a third world war and a nuclear war. Behind the endless escalation between Russia and Ukraine,